Purdue versus Minnesota. Now, through the lens of this game, we're going to talk about Purdue basketball this year. We're going to talk about Purdue basketball from the past, and we're going to talk about Purdue basketball going forward. So, we're going to focus on the offense and the defense. First, we're going to use the offense. Now, the funny thing watching Purdue, especially in 2020, is that they're the exact same team for like the last 5 years. They have the exact same archetype of player, except the only thing that changes is the names. So, for example, we look at Purdue basketball in 2020. We've got, Stevanovic, we've got Hunter Jr., we've got Harms, we've got Proctor, like all these players that are familiar to Purdue fans now. You go back to 2018, 2017, 2016, and you've essentially got the exact same team just with different names. So you've got Dakota Mathias, who's essentially just Stevanovic, the white guy shooter that is good from deep and they run plays for. You've got Harms, who is basically, Isaac Haas, which is basically just Matt Harms, but a bit bigger and stronger. You've got Vincent Edwards, who is just Hunter Jr., and then you've got PJ Thompson, who is essentially just Proctor, that veteran point guard. So you've got the exact same players, and because of that, they run the exact same plays. I guess that's why Purdue basketball has been so successful over the years, is that they've got that continuity in scheme, they've got that continuity in culture, they got that continuity and like that vision, whereas they don't recruit players and then try and adjust a scheme to that players. They recruit players to a scheme, unlike other schools that might do one and dones and things like that. So, for example, using this game against Minnesota as an example, we've got this play here where they use some misdirections at the top of the key. They pass it out to the four who comes up from the top or comes from the bot to the key. And because of that, misdirection at the top of the key, they've now cleared the space around the paint and rim. They pass it to Harms, who gets an easy layup. Same play, this time in the second overtime. Again, misdirection at the top of the key. Passes it to the four, who in this case is Wheeler. The paint is cleared out. Because of that misdirection, they pass it to Harms, who gets the easy dunk. Now you go back to Purdue in 2018, and they run this exact same play as some random game against Michigan. But again, misdirection at the top of the key, pass it out, that clears the paint, they pass it to Isaac Haas, and he does Isaac Haas stuff, and gets an easy layup. So again, another post-feed play that Purdue runs, this time in 2020, a player, this again, just a soft screen at the top of the key, Stevanovic, who's at the bottom here, he clears out, runs to the edge. That opens up again the paint because everyone's spaced correctly. They pass it into Harms. He figures it out and gets a layup. Exact same play. Stevanovic clears out. Run across the baseline. Pass it to the top of the key. The paint is free. The rim is free. They pass it to Harms, who gets a more difficult shot. But again, he gets it in. But because of that misdirection and obviously Stevanovic clearing out. You go to Purdue in 2018. This time they're at Michigan. They run the exact same play. Dakota Mathias, who's basically Stevanovic, just in a different body. Then they do some misdirection at the top of the key. They pass it out to Carson Edwards, who gives it to Haas. And he eventually gets a up and under the rim. Exact same play. Another type of post feed. Purdue in 2020 run. They start off with a horns action. They do a bit of a rub action at the bottom. A guard rubbing for, again, Harms to try and get him free. That player gets the ball at the top of the key, passes it in, easy dunk. Later in the first half, again starting that horns action. Rub, a guard rubbing for a big player. This time it's not Harms, it's Williams. He gets the ball in the block, posts up, does a bit of a shimmy and gets it in. So we go back to Purdue in 2018. This time it's a little bit different. They don't start with a horns action, but it's basically the same play. Again, there's another rub action. This time Vincent Edwards is rubbing for Isaac Haas. Gets at the top of the key, gets the ball, and he lays it in. So Purdue run the exact same plays now as they did 3 years ago. And you'd think that because of that, they'd be easy to scout for. But because of that, they have that continuity. They have the same coaches coaching these same philosophies. They have these players that they're perfectly fitted to the scheme. They're almost impossible to defend. They've got these big players. They've got great shooters. They've got great athletic players like Hunter Jr. and Thompson, as they did back in the day with Vincent Edwards and PJ Thompson. So That's Purdue's offense in 2020 against Minnesota, and Purdue's offense in 2018, 2017, 2016 against Michigan and Maryland that I've got. So now we're going to look at their defense. Now onto the defense. Now Purdue in this game against Minnesota kind of exposed themselves on defense in that when they're in crunch time, like one possession games at the end of the overtimes and end of the game, they kind of took certain players off that showed who they preferred on defense and who they thought was a liability. And that player was Travion Williams. Now, this is kind of awkward to talk about because on the day I'm recording this is the day that Travion Williams scored 36 points against Michigan with about 20 rebounds. Now, that's all good and stuff. He's a great offensive player, and what Harms doesn't make up for in muscle, Williams makes up for. But on defense, he just about gives up 36 points a game, and because of that, they take him off in these key situations. Now, that's the case in this Minnesota game, and I've watched some of that Michigan game that happened today, and just from the highlights, I see that they exposed Travion Williams mainly on defense as well. And they do that through two different ways, at least Minnesota did. They do it through high screen on balls as well as in post plays. So in the on balls, again, this is just the start of the possession. The broadcast just cut to this at this point, but we've got number 25, who Purdue exposed on offense. Now that he's going to expose Purdue on defense, he sets a high screen here with Williams being the primary player they're trying to attack, with Hunter at the top of the key. And the problem with Williams in these defensive situations is he just doesn't read the game well, and he just kind of gets lost in space. So they set a screen. Purdue usually hedges in these situations. On the side on balls, they hard hedge. They really go up the floor, but in these middle of the floor on balls, they kind of just sit back and do a bit of a soft hedge. So soft hedges, he follows them around, but Minnesota do a backdoor cut. Now, you could say that Purdue's weak side defense, Proctor might have should have been back here, but you could also say that Williams, at about this point here, should have started retreating because at this point, the initial on-ball has died, it's faded away, and he can now at this point return to his defensive assignment, which is being the 5. Because Harms, when Harms and Williams are on together, Williams is usually the 5 and Harms is the 4. So at this point, he should go back. But now Minnesota's kind of backdoor pass and they get an easy dunk because Proctor can't defend against a 5. He's a guard. So this is just one of the instances. Next clip. Again, putting him in that high on-ball situation. Same exact players. High on-ball. And again, at this point, probably about this point here, you've got, Harms. He's done the right thing on the weak side. He's basically rotated into take that roll man. And now Williams at this point should start retreating, considering that Hunter Jr. has got this play covered up. However, he stays in the play. He doesn't retreat back fast enough, and the ball's just lobbed in over him for an easy dunk. Now you could say that, or easy layup. You could say that Harms should have stuck with his man, but they've also got a wide open 3-point shooter here that he could have been concerned about. So Williams just needs to get there and lay up. Next clip. Again, same exact players. They put Williams in that on ball. It almost looks like the same clip. And again, like Purdue does that defensive rotation. Harms comes in and takes that man. But this is going to be a situation we're going to cover soon with Williams' footwork. He doesn't have the greatest footwork. He doesn't have great lateral side-to-side speed. So he kind of gets cooked and he commits the foul. And it's it's not a foul actually, but he gets cooked either way and Minnesota scores. Because Harms has got to take, that 5-man in case he gets the easy dunk or the easy backdoor cut. So Williams is kind of isolated by himself in this situation, and he just gets absolutely cooked in the by the ball handler. So that's kind of how they attack him. One way, they attack him through high screen on balls. The second way they attack him is in the post. Now Williams, you'll think is a good post player, but as I said, he doesn't have great lateral movement. Now whenever they put Williams in post defense, they'll usually send a help defender because they probably know that this is a weakness of his. However, when you do that, at some point that help defender's got to leave because they've got open 3-point shooters, or there's someone going to end up in a dunk spot, or someone's going to backdoor cut. So eventually that help man has got to retreat back to his own assignment. But that kind of leaves William on an island here. And again, this number 25 from Minnesota absolutely cooks him. So he kind of overcommits to the strong side, and that allows the Minnesota player to easily rotate and get that right hand layup. Oh, gets him. So again, post in the play. Harms comes in to help, but again, at some point, Harms has got to leave because someone will come into that dunker spot or someone will backdoor cut. So he's got to kind of retreat back to his own assignment. That leaves Williams again on an island. And he just gets absolutely cooked again. He gets walked around. He doesn't have that lateral movement that you would hope someone in that situation would have. He kind of doesn't have that ability to move side to side, and Minnesota get that easy layup again. And again, we're in a high on-ball situation. Goes into the post. Help defense from Harms again. But again, there's this dunker here, so someone's got to retreat back and defend that. But that leaves Williams on an island again. Doesn't have that lateral speed to catch up, and he commits a foul, and that's 2 easy free throws. Especially in overtime, that's pretty bad. So, that's kind of the problem here with why he, in one score positions, when Purdue knew that the position was going to start off with them on defense, they took him off for Wheeler, and that's because of, again, that high on-ball defense and that post defense as well. The last thing I'll point out is his footwork. Again, another high on-ball situation. Minnesota are really trying to exploit this matchup. He does a hard hedge this time. He gets back, but his player, number 25 of Minnesota, gets the ball at the top of the key. And now, again, this is kind of like he's got to close this player out. But he kind of stomps on both feet, and that commits a foul on the way through. At this point, so like if you do this, boom, like that, that's an easy thing to attack because you've set your feet and you've got essentially no lateral mobility at this point. Number 25 of Minnesota has acknowledged that and has basically walked past him, and that's an easy foul. So he's not very good at space. He can't move laterally, and he kind of gets lost in space in those high on-ball situations. So he might be a great offensive player, and he showed that against Michigan, but on defense, he's easy to exploit in all these different situations. That's going to be difficult for Purdue in the Big Ten, especially when there's so many teams that have great big men and great guard combos. When you think of Ohio State, which is the other team I know probably best in the Big Ten, like all they would have to do is put Williams in like high on-ball screens with Caleb Wesson and DJ Carden, or Caleb Wesson and Walker, and basically just absolutely roast him in all these different situations. He might score 36 points, but he might also give up 40, and the other team is going to win. I mean, this is the second team that they've played again that's put them into double overtime. They've won one against Minnesota, but they lost the other one against Michigan, and that's with him scoring 36 points. So that's Purdue on defense. Williams is the man to attack with high screen on balls, definitely in the post, or by exposing his lack of lateral mobility with his footwork. Thank you very much, and if you want to buy the code window that created this timeline, or any of the other things that you see on my channel, you can check out the website, and there's a link in the description. Thank you very much, and see you later.